Hi, I'm Matthew, a Policy and Research Officer at the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals. We've heard a lot of information today, a lot of very interesting presentations. I'm going to do something a little bit different. We're going to try and be a little bit more introverted thinking about you and your businesses, and more specifically how payroll can affect the employee financial well-being. So we're going to look at what financial well-being is, and then look at, is that your responsibility? And then what you can do, like I said, specifically what payroll can do to affect these things, such as salary sacrifice, pay on demand, alternative payment methods, help with payslips, and then outside of your business, things like employee assistance programs. So first we need to define what we mean by employee financial well-being, and I've pulled this together from a few different places to have a succinct sentence that we can link back to and keep having a look at. So feeling comfortable, secure and at ease with your finances both now and in the future. This isn't just a here and now problem, it's something that you need to look forward for the future as well. Someone who is paid very well but hasn't planned for retirement could have poor financial well-being. And it's important to remember all aspects of that. With the current cost of living crisis, you can't look at the news without reading about it. Fuel prices going up, interest rates rising. Everyone's being hit very hard by this at the moment. And companies now need to really look and see what they can do to support employees and to help them achieve that financial well-being. Now, of course, some people may think that's for the individual to sort out, that's for employees to handle themselves. And to the question, is that your responsibility? I would ask, do you like loyal, hardworking, and engaged staff? Because this is what you get if you care about employee financial well-being. A recent pay dashboard study said that 43% of employees would be more loyal to a company that provided financial assistance to them, or financial guidance and support. Again, hardworking and engaged staff is just something you see time and time again being discussed when talking about happy and financially stable employees. Currently, with the Great Resignation being talked about, or the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, it's becoming more and more important every single day to retain staff. That recruitment and retention is so important to businesses nowadays, and it's not something that can be taken lightly. But don't just take my word for it. Employees think that this is important too. So this comes from a recent study by the Building Society Association, and the context of this is workplace saving schemes. But we can see that 62% of employees say that their employers should care about financial well-being. And with this, it is important to note that that figure actually rises with the people who had more interest in these financial saving schemes, but this is just the average. And 24% said that their employers do care. So that is a huge gap of employers who aren't perceived to care by their employees. And fixing this gap, again, with that recruitment and retention is extremely important. Personally, I see this as a little bit of a customer is always right situation, or in this case, the worker is always right. And I don't mean that in the sense that customers can walk into any shop and demand anything they want, just as the same as the workers can't demand what you do as a business. But as we've seen, as Dan said, with the feedback that needs to be taken and looked at and how you evolve your business, if you don't take things seriously that the customer or the worker base expects, that's going to have a serious knock-on impact on that recruitment strategy and how your business positions itself going forward. On top of this, poor financial well-being can affect employees in that 1 in 4 workers say that it affects their work, and this comes from a recent CIPD study. If you've got time, really recommend you read through that. It's a very long report, so just the executive summary might do, but it has some really good insights, especially in light of the Great Resignation and the current issues we're seeing around employee retention and recruitment. On top of this, there's other things that maybe aren't foreseen quite as easily. Absenteeism, access to transportation or affordability of transportation, even things like nutrition can have a serious impact on your employees. And anything that impacts your employees, they're the foundation of your business. You can't do it without them. So why payroll? So of course I'm from the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals, but why should this be something that payroll cares about? So payroll's already involved in employee finances. If you're discussing things with employees, it's already that comfortable point of contact for discussing financial situations. And it's the perfect place to integrate technology. We've heard plenty this morning about all the things that can be integrated into payroll systems and around the periphery that can feed into the payroll systems, the payroll processes. And that access to data. We have a wealth of data nowadays, and we need to use that data. Things like gender pay gap reporting, and going further, potential for ethnicity pay gap reporting, things like that. Feeding into that data that we've got access to is important. As Jess was saying about the linking of HR and payroll, having that close relationship and working together is very important. We can also alert people to things that they're entitled to, tax efficiencies such as marriage allowances, things like that. But I can hear people asking, when are we going to have time to do that? And that's the great thing about what we've been talking about this morning. Artificial intelligence, or they should really say artificial intelligence and technology, time and efficiency savings. All the wonderful things we've heard about this morning are intended to save you time. And that time can be focused on things such as employee financial well-being that will really put payroll in a much more strategic position within your business. And we're currently working on our Future of Payroll report at the CIPP. And one of the things that we're seeing is that payroll is more and more becoming not a back office function. People are more seeing the strategic impact that payroll can bring to your business. So now let's look at some of the more technical side of it, the what can you do? So I'm going to start off with salary sacrifice because I'm going to appeal to the business side of you, because salary sacrifice can be fantastic because it can create savings for both the employee and the employer. So for certain things such as pensions, childcare vouchers and cycle to work schemes, things that come under the optional remuneration arrangements can see those tax savings and NI savings. It's important to remember the national minimum wage implications though. You cannot take an employee under a national minimum wage with a salary sacrifice arrangement. However, in a recent consultation response to the Low Pay Commission, when looking at the 2023 national minimum wage rates, the CIPP has put a recommendation forward for that to be reviewed. One of the members had worked out that someone on minimum wage, full-time hours, it would essentially cost them £120 a year to contribute to a pension that is not a salary sacrifice arrangement. Again, looking at that long-term financial security for the future. Now remember, the rules on this tightened in 2017, so there are only a few things that you can get those tax benefits from. But I really do encourage you that if you're not using salary sacrifice for pension, have a look and see if that's something that can be integrated. Like I said, you get the NI and tax savings for both employee and employer. And we all have to do pension with automatic enrolment, so it's not something that's going to be a new process. Pay on demand. So this is still a relatively new concept. We're starting to see this creep in a little bit more and more. And this is essentially just access to earned wages. And it starts to open up the question of, do we have the right to withhold funds from a worker that has earned those funds? Historically, we've moved from weekly payrolls to more monthly payrolls on average. And that essentially is to aid in employer cash flow. But what about the employee's cash flow? These are the things we need to start thinking about, especially in the current economic climate. Now, faster payments are becoming more prevalent, and that is helping with this sort of thing. But HMRC may need to do some catching up in this area, because currently the legislation allows for the shortest payroll time to be that 1 week period. So if this becomes more accepted practice, something that is going to become a lot more prevalent, we may need to see some legislation changes here. Alternative payments. So HMRC allows payments to be made in what they call readily convertible assets. And these can be stocks and shares. Now, when I say shares, a share incentive scheme is a separate way of paying in shares that needs to be handled separately. Commodities, financial instruments, and crypto assets. So we're thinking about things like Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, that sort of thing. We're starting to see payroll software that is allowing for cryptocurrency payments. Still very early stages with that, but something to think about. Now, I almost didn't include this alternative payments because I looked at it and thought, can't pay my mortgage, can't pay my rent with commodities and stocks and shares. I saw this as something that didn't affect those that were lower paid. But like I said earlier, we're looking at financial well-being now and in the future. So someone high level in a company who earns lots of money might not be saving for retirement. That can still have an impact on their financial well-being. So it needs to be something that's looked at as a whole, not just as that affects the lower paid. Something that can definitely sit firmly within the payroll department is understanding payslips. So having the resources to explain, and this might not necessarily be contacting the payroll department, this might be tools and fact sheets that you can direct workers to. Resources to explain deductions, tax efficiency and tax reliefs available. Because 1 in 10 people struggle to understand their payslip every single payday. Not just a one-off when there's something a bit more complex on there, every single payday. So having the access to this information, being able to signpost or help people out with this can be a huge help to someone who, like I say, if you didn't understand what was going into your bank account, that can add a huge stress. So this can really help. And I've mentioned about the payslip messaging that can be very effective. Now, we saw the HMRC's recommended payslip message for the health and social care levy. And there was a bit of contention about whether this was a bit political messaging and the sort of effectiveness of the message. But I really saw it as a good conversation starter. Payslip messaging doesn't need to tell the whole story, but it can signpost people to things that they might not realise are happening, can really start that conversation and make people comfortable coming and asking those questions. And finally, employee assistance programs. I just wanted to signpost that there are options available outside. There's outside support available. Smaller companies that have very few employees, maybe if you have a one-man band that's HR, payroll and finance all rolled into one person, may not feel like you have the resources to deal with some of this extra stuff. So there is support available. It can alleviate pressures on internal processes, and like I said, particularly good for those smaller businesses. And what these employee assistance programs can do is help out with a whole host of things. There are programs that offer legal support, gambling addiction support, mental well-being support, all of these things that you may not have the expertise or the time resource to provide. can be given through these schemes. Now, I'm not going to go into the sort of tax efficiencies of paying for these schemes because there are all sorts of complications there, but just know that that support is available. I'm now going to open up for any questions if anyone would like to ask anything. Test out how hungry everyone is, ready for lunch?
Just one thing I'd like to say is we've done some research into benefits because we're looking at our benefits package internally within the PSSG group, and our chair actually came up with some facts that a company introduced the ability for employees to access financial advisors, and it was the most preferred benefit in that company. And it's not one I would have thought of, but it really resonated what Mathew was saying to me, that it's a very different way of looking at benefits and the whole employee experience, which I would never have thought of. So I just wanted to say that that really resonated what you were saying to me as an employer about looking at the employment group holistically. So just want to endorse what you said, really.
Yeah, like I said, with the sort of the worker is always right. It's kind of you need to move with those trends. And if the trend is moving towards, we would like independent financial advice, and everyone else is offering that and you're not, it's something that sets you apart, but not in the right way. Any other questions? No problem. Are you taking over?
I'll just refresh everybody. So I think we've heard a really interesting view about how payroll can fit in an organisation from a different perspective. Obviously, we heard a lot about how software can help. That's just a really interesting view of how businesses are beginning to move payroll from being probably traditionally a bit of a Cinderella role, perhaps, right into the heart of the business, not just in terms of the way information flows, but also how we engage with our employees. So thank you very much indeed, Mathew, for bringing those points forward. I'd like now to break for lunch. Lunch is organised past reception, down where some people have had breakfast, along the corridor. I'd like everyone to be back, if possible, by 1:45. I know the programme originally said 2, but we're running a little bit ahead, so let's do 1:45. Over lunch, my colleagues have all got Sintra badges. That means they work for Sintra. Please talk to them, engage with them with anything you want to do. Our colleagues from IntelliHR and Pinpoint, as well as Mathew, are here to talk to, answer your questions, and discuss things in a less formal environment. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at 1:45.